Here are my 5 most important things from NFL's Week 11. I'm going to run it through. I'm going to run you through my thought process, how it went last night for Sunday night's main event, Kansas City at the LA Chargers. Kansas City wins at 30-27. But going up to it, if you watch enough sports, and if you do it for a living, you'll have these moments where you're thinking, hey, what about this scenario? And last night for me, I kind of went, I think the Chargers is just due for one of these wins. Why not? Division game, prime time, whole deal. They're at home. Like, why not? Yeah, I think the Chiefs are better, and maybe I'm going to pick the Chiefs for everything again this season. But it kicked off, and I started thinking to myself, what if tonight's the night? And guess what? Chargers are up early, 2013 at half. They're moving the football. I'm like, what if it is tonight? They did play them close at Kansas City. Remember? Pick 6 the other way as Herbert felt like he was going into the end zone. They're moving the ball. I keep telling myself the Chargers are due. It's 20-16 Chargers. It's 3rd and 17 at the 7 for Kansas City at their own 7, 3rd and 17. Would make more sense. And they convert it. And then 4 minutes later, it's a touchdown. Kansas City's up 23-20. Mike Williams, receiver, out. Keenan Allen on a snap count. Kenneth Murray, linebacker, out. Nasir Adelaide heading to the locker room. And then Keenan Allen fumbles. And I'm like, what the fuck was I thinking? This team is going to win? So a big swing the other way. But then guess what happens? Herbert puts together one of those incredible runs. They go up 27-23 after the McKinnon fumble, where I looked at it live and I thought he was dancing a bit. Like, if you're catching a screen that's behind the line of scrimmage, it's not out in the flats either. Like, you can't screw around. You better start getting upfield even if there's nothing there, or bouncing it somewhere, because there's going to be these huge defensive linemen that are behind you in close in proximity. But the more I watched it, I don't know that that's entirely fair to get on McKinnon with that fumble. But then the Chargers answer, and I'm thinking, this is real. It happened. And then you look up at the clock, realize there's some time left, and Mahomes goes 6 plays for 75 yards for Kelsey's 3rd touchdown in 1:15. And you're like, this thing's over. But the Chargers still have time. And they're the least sacked team in the NFL coming in, allowing only 14. Well, they gave up 5 last night. Chris Jones got the sack on first down on Herbert, where it looked like it might have been some sort of quarterback draw, similar to what Mahomes had done in the previous series. And then the interception to close this thing out was because of Jones and his pressure. I seriously think only Aaron Donald is ahead of Chris Jones as an interior defensive lineman. I just, that's it. So, now we're going to be left with, you don't hear a lot of the Jimmy Johnsons of the world suggesting they take Herbert over Mahomes. That's not a surprise. People run out of stuff with Mahomes, then it turns into like, are we taking him for granted? No, it's just not new anymore, right? It's just not new. He's incredible. It goes without saying. And the Chargers, are a 500 football team that I'm sick of making excuses for. Number 2, the NFC East. Well, we knew the strength of schedule projections were going to be rather light. Okay, so we knew that part of it. And the biggest reason is because of who they played in their cross matches, right? And we'll get to that in a second. Philly survives against the Colts. The turnover things, which I kept bringing up here, I'll admit it's a little petty because I suggested I don't know that they can keep up this pace. And then some Philly media member tweeted at me with signs inside the Eagles facility being like, Russillo thinks it's just luck. Look at these signs. Hey, man, if every football program was representative of the signs that I've seen hanging in the building, then there'd be no bad football teams. And you would have the most motivated human beings on the planet would be football players, specifically because the signs, if they work that well. So they had 3 total giveaways in their first 8 games, 2 against the Colts, 4 against Washington, which again was kind of a survival game. But I think the good part is that the Eagles are tested, kind of like that TCU stuff I talked about last week. Just, all right, you lost to Washington. Washington's a different team. We're going to get to them in a second. But here against the Colts on the road, you had to make something happen there at the end. And they actually got back into that by running the football, which doesn't happen very often. So I think that's actually a positive for Philadelphia, instead of saying, hey, what's going on with you fighting with the Colts to the very last minute. So there you go. Dallas, 7-3. Their only losses are at Green Bay in overtime. We're fresh off of that one. The week 1 stuff that doesn't seem to matter all that much. And then week 6 at Philly with Cooper Rush. They stomped Minnesota. I don't know that there's any debate anymore about this. Pollard goes off 100 yards. Was it receiving, then 50 rushing, or the other way around? First time since Emmitt Smith. The only reason we're even bringing up any of this Ezekiel Elliott stuff, again, to remind you, is Jerry Jones is the only guy that would have paid him all of this money. So I think he just has to justify the cost, right? It's like, we don't use the beach house much, but we just like that we have it. So there's really no debate there, and I just thought it was really impressive considering. And I know there was the whole left side of the offensive line for Minnesota was out of the mix towards the end of the game, and Cousins, who's been getting blasted lately, who I actually think is doing really good against some of the pressure, where I feel like, especially one of those Buffalo throws. Anyway, this isn't about Kirk Cousins right now. Let's talk Washington. The best of times, the worst of times. 1-4 to 5-1. They are, if you look at their stats defensively, now remember 2 years ago, this was a top 5 defense with still a lot of the same similar personnel. Then last year, it was a disaster and, just kind of fell apart. You're like, wait, I thought this team at least had a good defense. Well, they're trending in the right direction now. You can make some argument here that they're a top 10 defense. And boy, did they show it at least in the first half. They held the Texans to 5 total yards. That's the last time a team has only had 5 yards in the first half of a game in 11 years. Staying with number 2 here, Giants to finish out the NFC East. They've lost 2 of 3. They weren't even close in this Lions game this weekend. Their over-under win total, I believe the number going in before the season started, of course, was 8.5. And they start tearing it up. And I'm like, man, that's going to go over. Now, remember, the NFC East is also their strength of schedule is because they're playing the AFC South and the NFC North. 2 of those 8 teams in those divisions have a winning record. Their combined records for the 2 divisions are 34 and 47. But the Giants are in a spot here where, look, I don't think they're going to go under the total at 7-3. But how many more games are they favored in the rest of the way? At the Cowboys, no. Washington at home, I don't know. Eagles at home, no. At Washington, no. At Minnesota, no. Colts at home, okay, maybe, and then at the Eagles. So I'll give you 1, maybe 2 games they'll be favored in the rest of the way. The NFL isn't going to work that way. I don't think they're going to lose every single game now. But I wonder if you're sweating a bit for an offense that just still isn't that good. Number 3, speaking of numbers, Dallas crushing Minnesota. There are 15 teams in the NFL with a positive point differential. Minnesota is not one of them. That seems hard to do. It's hard to do to be the 2 seed in your conference, to be 8-2 as a football team, and you actually have a negative point differential. But the Vikings have pulled it off. Now, look, point differential, is it everything? No, but it's not nothing. And sometimes it's a better sign of like how you're doing as a football team or basketball. Look, anybody that just wants to look at it, it could be skewed probably more in football with less sampling because of less games. But again, that's very hard to do. It's hard to be a 2 seed and have 15 teams to point differential that's positive, and you're not one of them. Number 4, totally unfair take time. I made that mistake week 1, post Tua. Felt it was justified. Even set it up. It's like, I don't really want to say this because I don't really do it, but I'm going to say it. Things I don't want to say out loud, but I'm going to. This kind of feels like the same thing. I don't think I have an open mind about Zach Wilson anymore. I'm not quick to dismiss. I'm not quick to annoy. You know that. But it feels like it's getting real close to dismissing time. Zach Wilson, NFL starting caliber quarterback. He was awful yesterday. I mean, I don't know which throw you want to. He was throwing it to guys in the flats like you didn't know which buttons were which. The McCourty pick was a layup. McCourty dropped it high over the middle, always dangerous. He almost threw a pick 6 in the comeback route. I don't know if that was on the receiver trying to get better position there. Then it looked like he was freaked out. There were multiple throws in the same game yesterday where you're thinking, what's going on? 9-22, looked terrible. He has 4 total touchdowns on the season. Flacco actually has 5. He has 4 games with a QBR under 50. I got 2 things for you. One's this stat from Sando. 20 starts in for Wilson. His negative EPA per pass play in the last 20 starts is last out of 41 quarterbacks drafted since 2012. That's not good. The other problem for Zach Wilson, and this is where we kind of get into the fair, unfair, like if he's winning, he's cute. When you're losing and you're at the podium, and you look like you're not talking about losing a football game, but you're apologizing for leaving the hose on overnight, it just doesn't work. Lastly, do you realize how good Denver's defense is? I kind of knew, but then I wasn't sure. They lose to the Raiders yesterday, and in a complete non-emotional attachment, I kind of felt good for Derek Carr getting a close one there. Denver is third in opponents scoring. They're third in yards per play allowed. Opponents' yards per play allowed. They're third in yards per game allowed. They're fourth against third down. They are a top 3 defense by almost any measure that matters. They score 14.7 points per game, last in the NFL, and the worst since 2018. I'm preparing you, though, for the end of the season DVD narration. Despite going 4-13, the Denver Broncos had 12 losses by only 1 score. 6 of their 7 losses are by 1 score. They're going to talk about we're actually pretty close. We're going to figure this thing out. We're going to make it work. Yeah, I don't know, dude. I mean, the Raiders also have 6 one-score losses, and I feel better about them. The Jets had a 1-score loss yesterday. You feel good about that team?